I told them to stop. They didn't listen. Brenda ripped out my wife's rose bush, turned my driveway into a damn shortcut for soccer moms and HOA wannabes. So, I built something. Buried deep under the gravel. Steel, pressure-loaded, hidden. And when her Lexus rolled in like she owned the place, I hit the switch. Boom. Her tires popped like balloons at a birthday party. She screamed. I sipped my coffee. And right then, she knew. This wasn't her road. It was mine. And she was done trespassing. My name is Ethan Hayes. I'm 45 years old, and I've lived a life that left more bruises on the inside than most people will ever see. I used to be a husband, a structural engineer, a man with a plan. Now, I'm just a guy with a dog, a toolbox, and a house too big for one person. My wife, Olivia, died 2 years ago in a head-on collision with a drunk driver. She was on her way home from picking up a pie for my birthday. They said she died instantly. I didn't. Something in me kept breathing, but it wasn't life. Not really. Since then, peace became a currency I couldn't afford to lose. So, I quit my job at the engineering firm and started consulting from home. It's quieter that way. No meetings, no forced smiles. Just code, designs, and Buddy, our golden retriever who never left her side while she was alive and now never leaves mine. Olivia and I had bought this house together. Our dream home. A corner lot with a curved driveway, tucked back from the main road. It was like our own little retreat. She always said it felt like a secret garden. We planted lilac bushes together, built a bird bath where we buried a time capsule with silly little notes and a tiny bottle of cheap champagne. She wanted us to dig it up on our 25th anniversary. We only made it to 11. This house became my entire world. The creak of the porch swing, the way the sun hit the front steps at dusk, even the cracks in the driveway. We built this life, one weekend project at a time. And now, it's all I have left. So when strangers started driving through that driveway like it was their own, it felt like someone was desecrating a grave. At first, it was just tire marks. A few here and there. Maybe the Miller kid practicing his turns, I figured. But they got deeper. Messier. Then one day, I came outside to find something different. A laminated paper sign nailed to a cheap wooden stake, stuck in the grass right at the edge of my property. Community flow access, temporary routing approved by HOA. I stood there for a long time, holding the sign in my hands like it had insulted my wife's memory. My land, our land, was suddenly a shortcut. Without permission. Without a conversation. I got in the truck and drove straight to the HOA office. It was a converted model home at the front of the neighborhood, smelled like old brochures and artificial lemon cleaner. And there she was, Brenda Larson. Her real name, no joke. She looked exactly like the woman you're imagining. Stiff blonde hair that didn't move in the wind, eyebrows permanently arched like she was always surprised by how much better she was than everyone else. She wore a pastel blue blazer with pearl buttons and carried a tablet like a badge of authority. Her lips were drawn tight in a smug little bow, and when she saw me walk in, she gave me the smile of someone about to lecture a child. "Mr. Hayes, right?" she said, her voice sugar-sweet with a bitter aftertaste. "Parcel 74B. Lovely lot. We've just had to implement a little temporary traffic solution during construction on Maple Avenue. It'll be just a few weeks." I told her it was my land. Private. Not community. Not for shortcuts. She didn't blink. She tapped her tablet with perfectly shaped beige nails and said, "Technically, your property borders the community boundary. That qualifies it as a soft access zone, if approved by the board." "Soft access zone?" I asked. "Show me where it says that." She gave me that smile again, the one that makes your skin crawl, and said, "Oh, we can go over the paperwork at the next meeting. Second Tuesday of next month. But by then, the road work will be done." I stared at her. "You're telling me strangers can use my driveway, and all I get is a promise to discuss it after it's already over?" She looked at me like I just failed a pop quiz. "Well, we're all part of a community, Mr. Hayes. Sometimes that means sharing space. It's about unity." Unity. What a word to throw at a man who lost everything and asked for nothing in return. I walked out of there with shaking hands. Not because I was afraid. Because I was furious. But I told myself to stay calm. Maybe it was temporary. Maybe I could put up a gate or post a sign. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of digging. They'd pulled out one of our lilac bushes. The one Olivia planted herself. HOA contractors were laying down a bed of gravel across the side of my lawn. Cones, signs, and paint. One of the signs read, "Exit only, please drive slow." On my land. I stood there barefoot in the driveway, Buddy beside me, staring at the mess like I was watching someone vandalize her headstone. That's when I knew. Brenda wasn't just a nuisance with a tablet. She was a tyrant in a blazer. And she had declared war on the wrong man. The war didn't start with a bang. It started with a slow crawl of SUVs and minivans. By the end of that week, my driveway was busier than the freeway. I'd be on the porch sipping coffee when a line of cars would snake through like they were late for school drop-off. One woman actually waved at me as if I was her valet. Another honked when my trash bins were blocking the lane. I caught one kid skateboarding down the curve, earbuds in, acting like this was some kind of public park path. He almost collided with Buddy, who barked in warning and scared the kid off the board. I apologized. The kid flipped me off. That's when I stopped apologizing. The final straw, a mom in a minivan pulled into the driveway, rolled down her window, and asked if I could move the mailbox just a little to the left so she could swing wider. That evening, I found my neighbor Dave loitering by the hedges. Dave was a quiet guy, the kind who always smiled and helped put up Christmas lights, but never said more than 5 words unless you handed him a beer. Tonight, though, he looked like he'd swallowed one whole. "Ethan," he said, voice low. I didn't want to get involved, but... "What is it?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Brenda's making moves. Big ones. She's petitioning the county to reclassify your driveway as a neighborhood easement. She's calling it an unofficial emergency access route. Says the HOA needs it for community safety flow." My mouth went dry. "She's got 2 board members already signed on," Dave added. "She just needs 3 more. Once they hit 5, they'll submit the paperwork." I stared at him. "She's going to try and steal my land?" He nodded. "Not figuratively. Literally." That night, I stood at the end of the driveway with Buddy beside me, my boots dug into the gravel they'd laid down without my permission. I looked out at the cars driving by, headlights flashing across my porch. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't temporary. This was an occupation. I cracked open a beer, stared at the ground, and whispered, "They think I'll roll over." But what they didn't know was that I used to design deterrent systems for commercial facilities. Mechanical solutions for keeping unauthorized vehicles out of restricted zones. Tire shredders, retractable bollards, remote gate locks. If Brenda wanted to turn my driveway into a road, she was about to learn how roads could bite back. But first, I called Leo. Leo was my cousin, a barefoot-in-the-courtroom type lawyer, the kind who filed lawsuits on his phone and stored legal documents in his grill cabinet. But when it came to property law, he was a force of nature. I told him everything. He didn't even let me finish before he said, "Take pictures. Document everything. Don't block the access yet. Let them think they're winning." "Why?" I asked. "Because when we strike, it's going to be with evidence, not emotion. And trust me, Ethan, we're going to bury them in paper so deep they'll need a zoning map just to find daylight." He told me to install cameras. Record every car, every tire mark, every sign. Get timestamps, get plates. And to leave everything as is, for now. But Leo, they're tearing up my land. And every inch they touch is another nail in their coffin. So, I did what he said. I became the world's most polite surveillance expert. Trail cams in the hedges, motion lights, infrared. I spent my evening sipping coffee with Buddy while cars zipped through like this was Disneyland. And I waited. Waited for Brenda to overstep. She didn't make me wait long. The next morning, I heard Buddy growling at the back fence. When I stepped outside, I nearly dropped my mug. For guys in neon vests were sawing through my fence. Not trimming, not patching. Sawing. One of them turned around like I was interrupting his lunch break. "Brenda approved this," he said casually. "We're creating alternate access to connect the park trail. Got to maintain flow." Flow. That cursed word again. "This is my fence," I said, marching forward. "You're on my land." He shrugged. "Community adjacent. We don't need a permit." They packed up and left when I threatened to call the sheriff, but the damage was done. There was now a 5-foot-wide hole in my back fence, like someone had punched a doggy door into my life. I called Leo. "Good," he said. "Let them keep digging their own grave. Now we go on offense." That night, we filed the first cease and desist letter. We also submitted a preliminary injunction to the county, along with photos, footage, and documentation of every HOA incursion. But that wasn't enough for me, because while Leo was handling the legal side, I was preparing the mechanical one. They wanted flow. They were about to get a masterclass in resistance. And the next part of this story, well, that's where things start to get sharp. I woke up to the sound of tires crunching gravel. Then another car. Then 3 more. It was time. Buddy stood by the front window, ears alert. He knew something was coming. So did I. I walked to the garage, opened the breaker box, and flipped a hidden switch. The system came to life. Quiet hum. Green light. The steel was ready. I poured a cup of coffee, grabbed the remote from the pegboard, and headed for the porch. Brenda came first, like a queen arriving at her conquered province. Her white Lexus glided onto my driveway like it belonged to her. She didn't even slow down to look. Didn't notice the slightly different texture in the gravel. Or maybe she didn't care. Because when you think you own the world, you stop looking at the ground. Behind her, 2 more SUVs. A silver Honda, a black Escalade. A caravan of entitlement. I watched them approach the trigger zone, the exact coordinates I had marked on the blueprint, calculated with the precision of a man who once designed moving floor traps for restricted docks. Brenda's front wheels rolled right over the disguised steel plate. I clicked the button. A sharp, pressurized hiss of air and metal. The sound of defiance made physical. Crunch. Her tires exploded. Both of them. The Lexus lurched forward like a wounded animal. It ground to a halt in the center of the driveway, tires hissing and flapping like gutted prey. The cars behind her screeched to a halt. Brenda stepped out, teetering in her heels like she was stepping onto a battlefield, not a driveway. Her perfectly pressed slacks were speckled with dust. Her blouse, some ridiculous lavender chiffon thing, was billowing in the breeze like a surrender flag she'd never admit to holding. She looked at the tires, then at me. I sipped my coffee. She screamed, "You sabotaged a community road." I raised my voice just enough for the other drivers to hear. "Private drive. You were warned." She pointed at the gravel. "There are spikes in there." "Yep," I said, calm as a sunrise. "Retractable. Legal. Fully documented. And there's a sign at the entrance." "You missed it." She hesitated, then snarled, "You'll be hearing from the HOA." I smiled. "And you'll be hearing from Leo." She stared at me for a beat longer, then her eyes narrowed. "Funny," she said quietly, just for me. "I wonder what Olivia would think of all this." My blood went cold. That was a line she should have never crossed. I said nothing, just walked inside. I didn't need to fight her anymore. I'd already won. An hour later, a certified letter arrived from the HOA. It was absurd, of course. They demanded I remove dangerous installations and accused me of endangering community members. Leo's reply, sent via priority overnight courier, was a masterpiece. Cease and desist, trespassing claims, damages, video evidence, and most satisfyingly, a full-color printout from my trail cam showing Brenda's car entering the driveway past the warning sign. But Brenda wasn't done. Oh no, because narcissists don't retreat, they escalate. She called an emergency HOA meeting the next evening. Leo and I showed up 15 minutes late, on purpose. The room was packed. Folding chairs, bad coffee, and the smell of suburban politics. Brenda sat at the head of the table, a stack of photos of her shredded tires spread out like crime scene evidence. She saw me walk in and smiled like a predator who still thought she had the upper hand. "This man," she said, standing dramatically, "has endangered this community. He has installed military-style traps on a shared access route." I raised a hand. She ignored me. Leo didn't. He stood, Hawaiian shirt clashing with the beige horror of the HOA room, and passed around printed copies of my property deed. "This isn't a shared route. It's private property. Owned, documented, recorded. You voted to use it based on false information. That's fraud. That's liability." The room fell silent. Brenda flushed. "He's exaggerating." "Then let's talk about this," Leo grinned. He played security footage. Brenda's tech guy, Gary, caught at 2:14 a.m., dressed in black, cutting caution tape, trying to tamper with my gate lock. Gasps. Murmurs. One woman audibly said, "Is that Gary?" Another voice from the back, "Brenda, didn't you forge my signature last spring?" Leo looked Brenda in the eye. This was an organized act on behalf of the HOA. That means you're responsible. A board member stood. I moved for a vote of no confidence. Another stood. Seconded. All in favor. Hands went up like dominoes. Except Dave. He hesitated, looked down, then slowly raised his hand. Last. Brenda's face went pale. The queen was falling. But she wasn't going down without poison. She turned to me one last time, her voice low and bitter. This isn't over, Ethan. You think this ends with a vote? You don't know how deep I'm willing to go. I met her stare. No. But I do know how far I'll go to protect what's mine. She stormed out. No goodbye, no defense. Just the sound of her heels clicking like a retreating army. And me? I walked home with Buddy by my side. The wind cool and sweet, the gravel crunching under my boots like applause. The war wasn't over, but the battlefield had shifted. And now, I was no longer defending. Now, I was hunting. The vote was done. Brenda was out. But like every petty tyrant, she didn't vanish. She slithered back underground, whispering, plotting, waiting for the next week's spot. And I knew better than to think silence meant peace. Because 2 weeks later, the silence broke. First, a flyer in everyone's mailbox. Together we flow, a message from your community advisor. It was signed by Brenda. Not president, not chair. Just community advisor, a title she invented for herself. It featured a stock photo of smiling families, a new neighborhood map, and a quote about forgiveness. She lost the throne but built her own altar. Then came the envelope taped to my garage. County letterhead, bold font, notice of investigation, unauthorized land modifications, obstruction of community access, possible code violations. I read it twice. Then I laughed. Because this wasn't from the county, not really. It was a complaint filed by the HOA. Filed by Brenda. I called Leo. He didn't laugh. He cursed. This is her Hail Mary, he said. If she can't win with votes, she'll win with red tape. Delay you, drown you, make you crack. But I wasn't cracking. I was preparing. The inspector arrived 3 days later. City-issued sedan, clipboard, sunglasses. The kind of guy who looks like he's seen it all and is already tired of it. I met him in the driveway. Buddy barked once, then sat like a sentinel, tail still, watching the man like he knew exactly what this was. You Ethan Hayes? I nodded. I'm here about the complaint. Need to take a look around. Be my guest, I said. I've got all the documents bound and tabbed. He blinked. Seriously? I led him to the porch, where 3 color-coded binders sat waiting. Zoning, property rights, HOA overreach. He started flipping through. As he did, the silence between us turned from polite to impressed. You built this spike system yourself? Prototyped it years ago. Fully retractable, solar-powered. Legal under private land use. He whistled low. Looks like something I saw at a logistics yard in Richmond. I grinned. That's because it was. He flipped to the final section. Stopped. Wait. She submitted this map to us. He held up a copy of the neighborhood plan, my driveway highlighted in green, labeled Emergency Route B. She forged this, he said. This wasn't in the official record. I nodded. We've got the meeting footage where she unveiled it. Timestamped. Publicly recorded. He exhaled slowly and looked up from the page. That's going to be a problem. For her. Then, softer, more sincere, you've done your homework. I wish more homeowners stood their ground like you. He snapped a photo of the forged map, took one last look at Buddy, then gave me a subtle nod. I'll file the report today. What happened next didn't make headlines, but it made history, at least in our neighborhood. The county launched an audit, not just of Brenda's fake maps, but of every single HOA decision she had her hand in over the last 2 years. Contracts, permits, spending all of it. Turns out Brenda had used HOA funds to buy a $600 office printer for her own home, cover a wellness retreat in Scottsdale for 3 people, all listed under her maiden name, order $1,400 worth of community branding supplies, which turned out to be banners with her face on them, and a Brenda Cares table runner. The fallout was brutal and fast. She was fined by the county, banned from holding leadership in any registered HOA for 5 years. Criminal investigation pending. Residents turned, board members resigned. The HOA bylaws were rewritten. And Brenda? She vanished. Some said she left town. Others said she was holed up in her sister's condo 5 miles away. watching the neighborhood on Facebook like a bitter ghost. I didn't care, because the war was over. 2 months passed. The shortcut died. The gravel hardened. The sign stayed up. Private property NO through traffic trespassers will be spiked. One afternoon, Dave walked over. He had something wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a small wooden frame. A hand-drawn cartoon. A sad, wide-eyed tire with a speech bubble that read, "I regret everything." "Found it in my kid's notebook," Dave said, scratching the back of his neck. "We figured you earned this." I laughed. The kind of real, guttural laugh I hadn't felt in years. We grilled burgers that weekend. A casual invite turned into a block party. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to in a year came with folding chairs and beers. A woman who once tried to fine me for leaving my recycling bin out baked me a pie. Leo showed up, wearing his ugliest Hawaiian shirt and aviators, holding a fake certificate in a dollar store frame. It read, "To Ethan Hayes, in recognition of outstanding neighborhood defense against tyranny." It was ridiculous, and it was perfect. That night, after the laughter faded and the grills cooled, and Buddy settled at my feet, I stepped out into the driveway one last time. The wind was still. The trees whispered in the breeze. The gravel sparkled like tiny embers under the porch light. I knelt, opened the maintenance hatch, and checked the spike system. Still armed. Still ready. But I didn't press the button. Because now, I didn't need to. This wasn't about gravel or fences or HOA bylaws. It was about the one thing I couldn't protect before. The life I built. The peace we planned. And this time, no one was going to take it from me. I turned off the porch light and stepped back inside. But just before the door shut, my eyes caught something far across the street. Low to the ground, tucked behind a hedge. A faint red blink. A hidden camera? Still on. Still watching. Buddy growled low, almost silently. I stepped back, stared into the dark for a long second, and whispered, "Let her try." Then I closed the door. Brenda was gone. But maybe not for good.